Hello, everyone. Welcome to Idea Presents College to Corporate, Episode 2. I am Pallavi, and we have a very special guest with us today, Nidhi Shenoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nidhi Shenoy. I'm studying in 8th semester of Artificial Intelligence and Data Science. I've been placed in Belco. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for this opportunity.
You got to visit Japan even before joining for work. What was that moment like?
Oh, it was really great, to be honest. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the email. And the chance to visit that Ritsumeikan University along with Sayed sir and everyone else, it was very memorable. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we are really going to cherish those memories.
Let's speak about your college journey. What was college in your expectations, and what was the reality like?
To be honest, I walked in without any expectations, and I'm very happy with the reality. I think I'll always look at these 4 years pretty fondly.
That's good to know. What was one of the biggest mistakes that you made in your early years, which you think students must not repeat?
I think, speaking about engineering, I walked in with the assumption that a good engineer is someone who has the syntax of the language he's dealing with at their fingertips. I don't think that's the case, and engineering is more about a proper problem solving approach. So, yeah, I would ask people to steer clear of that assumption.
So you learn that engineering is more about learning and not about knowing everything, right?
Exactly, yes. So in case you find yourself that you don't know a certain syntax or something, just Google it up, look it up. In the grandest scheme of things, it matters that you've solved the problem rather than remembered every detail about whichever stack you're learning.
What was one smart decision that you took that you think helped in your placements?
Not sure about smart since it wasn't really much of a decision, but I think having great friends who knew what to do for placements were happy to share that knowledge with me. That would be one. And the second one, since I'm placed in a Japanese company, would be the decision to learn Japanese.
I think we all have one question in our mind, and that is CGPA versus skills. What actually matters more?
I think, of course, in placement and in real life, it is skills that matter. But CGPA is like your key card that gives you entry to, that makes you eligible to sit for a lot of companies which have a cutoff. So make sure to have a decent enough CGPA, but skills are what really matter.
That was like a relief to hear. Did you face any failures in your entire journey, and how did you cope with it?
Yeah, I think a recent one that comes to mind is the first interview that I gave for Louisa AI, and I did not make it in. I made it to the second round where I got a bunch of system design questions, which I wasn't pretty well equipped to deal with at that time. So my way of coping with that was coming out of that interview cubicle and looking up resources for system design. Yeah, that's one failure that comes to mind, I suppose.
How do you deal with it mentally? Don't you like question yourself? Don't you feel bad? Don't you start questioning your capacity?
Yeah, I'm sure that's the first response that comes to mind when a person fails at something. But I think it's important to be detached and take a step back. Just because it's one failure, it's one speed bump, that doesn't mean it need not be the end of the journey.
So you mean to say that mistakes don't define us, they build us, isn't it?
Yeah,
Talking about your placement preparation, when was the time you actually started to prepare seriously?
I think talk about preparing seriously, it would be at the end of second year after the fourth semester.
What did you like focus more on? DSA, core skills, the Japanese language?
Think it was a little bit of everything because there was DSA going on in the background, and we would have dev for our college projects, core subjects in bite-sized chunks daily, and Japanese language classes were ongoing at that time, but not that consistent, kind of sporadically. But yeah,
I think consistency is a very difficult thing to maintain in our lives. And how did you manage to be consistent?
the idea was that due to lab exams, the semester end exams, there would be a lot of times where I couldn't make it in time for class. But I would try to continue regardless. If there's a chapter that I miss, I would try to go through it myself, even if, not that perfectly, and continue with classes as soon as able to.
In the era of having internet, there are a lot of resources available online, and we keep getting confused which exactly do we stick with. So how did you deal with that?
I think one common pitfall there is that we start off with a set of resources and then we think that, oh, this other set that I've come across looks better, seems faster, more optimized perhaps. So we tend to make a switch. I think if you avoid that pitfall and just choose one set of resources and stick to it faithfully, any set of resources would be good.
What is one thing that you did that made you stand out from the other applicants in your job profile?
Hmm. Sit with that for a minute. I think standout is a very strong word. To be honest, if there's such a thing, I feel like I walked into it without expecting anything, just thinking that I'll give my best. And maybe that gave me a little bit of confidence to face whatever was coming. I think that would be it.
How did you deal with the nervousness during all these interviews? What if they threw a question at you that you didn't know? How did you handle that? Oh, I didn't know this question moment.
Weirdly enough, now that I think of it, I can confess to being a little nervous before this podcast, but I wasn't nervous at all before the interview because I did not expect I'll make it that far. It was like it was superfluous, so I was very happy. And in that happiness, I don't think I was that nervous.
Let us now walk through the selection process that you went through for the company that you were placed in. Do you mind telling us about the online test, the interviews, and how long the entire process was?
Yeah, sure. So Bell came, I think, in the middle of July 2025. And initially, they sent a questionnaire. So initially, we had to log into this platform called Yay Freshers and have a profile set up there. And that would be the resume that we are supposed to submit. Since Bell came through Zenkin, that was the process. After that, they gave us a questionnaire. The questionnaire had questions what you would expect in a Japanese interview, like what do you plan to do after going to Japan? How many years do you plan to stay there? What are your hobbies? What are some what are some instances where you had to deal with conflict resolution if you worked in team settings? And if you worked in team settings, what are those? Just off the top of my head. And from that questionnaire, they ended up shortlisting 7 people from our college and a total of 32 people across colleges. So they come in the Dakshin Kannada belt as well as Bangalore. And out of those 32 people, they shortlisted 16 after the technical round. So the technical round, we had 2 weeks of time. They mainly wanted to check if we are familiar with the technologies like GitHub, VS Code, etc. So they gave us 2 DSA questions beforehand, and we were supposed to upload the solutions to GitHub, as well as the main crux of the technical interview was app designing. So they wanted us to design an app for attendance management. And they had a list of required features as well as any extra features that we would want to showcase. And throughout the technical interview, which was about 20 to 25 minutes, if I'm not wrong, we had to defend the decisions that we made regarding app design. And after that first interview, there were 16 of us, and the second interview was to take place in Bangalore. And there were two HR rounds in that second interview. Um, After the first HR round, they brought the number down to 6. And finally, they ended up selecting 4 people after the second round. So the HR round, there were 2 rooms. One room had an AI translator, and the other room had a human translator, as well as people from Zenkin there. So it was a mixed bag of questions. But yeah, that was the whole process.
When it comes to behavioral questions, how is that you prepared for the such questions? How do you keep your calm? How do you answer such questions? What do you know when to answer? Did you read books or did you listen to people talk and that's how you know how to speak?
Mm, Not quite. When it comes to behavioral questions, I think what you voiced is a you know common doubt which people have. But before approaching that interview, I did not really think too much about it, and most of the questions I got, I feel like I ended up thinking on the spot there, which is not a bad thing because you'll be able to cast back and you'll find experiences that you would want to elucidate in front of the interviewer. That being said, I think it's always a good idea to practice maybe in front of a mirror or something like that.
I think when it comes to Japanese companies, the language is very important. So, what was your journey when you were learning the language? What were the certifications you cleared? What were the challenges you faced? And how can we do this?
But language, you're right, Japanese companies do place a lot of importance in the language, which is understood because you'll be interacting with Japanese nationals. So you'll be expected to talk, write, and uh, work with Japanese to a given degree. That being said, the interview, Japanese doesn't really hold that much importance beyond the Jiko Shokai, which is the self introduction. So that is something you'll be expected to nail because your Japanese abilities will be evaluated based on how well that goes. Beyond that, it doesn't really come up. If you show a willingness to learn the language and if you have something to prove that willingness, say maybe a JLPT certificate or an AT certificate, though JLPT does hold more importance, it would be pretty helpful.
What were the cultural differences that you noticed immediately?
I think the immediate cultural difference we noticed was that their cafeteria was more silent than our library. So there's a lot of silence around you. And even when you try to be quiet, you feel like you're much more loud due to that silence. So that and perhaps the discipline with which they line up, whether it's an elevator, whether it's a bus line, those were very good positive differences, I would say.
As you belong to the first batch of AI and DS, how did you deal with the uncertainties?
I think we didn't. I think I can speak for my batch as a whole. We didn't really think much of the uncertainties or anything. We just dove in head first, and we had fun figuring it out along the way. Whether it was syllabus or our throwing a freshers' day party for ourselves. All of it was really fun. Forming the association for the first time and just interacting with the teachers, asking for their advice about exams or anything. I think it was a really fun and memorable experience.
That's very fun to hear. Your entire experience is very impressive. I would love to know what your hobbies are.
For that
Yeah.
question, I do have some hobbies. I like to play chess. I like to read in my free time as well as write a little, a bit of poetry and short stories, maybe in Hindi and English. I happened to go with the university chess team to Reva in my first year, and that was a wonderful experience. I was glad that I could partake in my hobby in that way. We had a lot of fun there, and I was the captain of the girls' chess team for these past years. So I'll miss that now. Yeah.
Could you tell us more about your interaction with the Japanese students?
Yeah, sure. I think all the students as well as the staff who were accompanying us, they were very warm. And after we were done with the activities for the day, like designated activities for the day, they invited us for dinner as well as karaoke. So that was a very fun experience. They didn't have to do that, but they went out of their way to make us feel at home. Even the people in general whom we ended up meeting on the metro as well as in the museum. They were very, very warm. And in fact, I'm still in touch with one of them via email. So that I think I had an impression that Japanese people are a little reserved. And I think that is true, but that does not mean that they're not warm.
What were the cultural differences that you noticed immediately?
I think the immediate cultural difference we noticed was that their cafeteria was more silent than our library. So there's a lot of silence around you. And even when you try to be quiet, you feel like you're much more loud due to that silence. So that and perhaps the discipline with which they line up, whether it's an elevator, whether it's a bus line, those were very good positive differences, I would say.
What approaches did you follow while answering behavioral interview questions?
To be honest, I think I found myself thinking on my feet for the behavioral questions. but that didn't prove to be a problem, luckily, since I was able to come up with examples to illustrate whatever was asked of me. Even I think during the initial assessment that they had given, I ended up writing it on the spot. So yeah, that was my approach.
I think one question that all of us will have is how does one research about the company? And especially since you chose to work for a Japanese company, I'm sure they might have asked questions like why Japan and questions about the work environment, the culture. How did you answer such questions and how did you research about the company and Japan as a whole?
Yeah, so I think my curiosity was awakened in Belk after the pre-placement talk. So the pre-placement talk was really, really good, and it really made me want to join the company. And I think that was where I decided I don't want to join any other Japanese company apart from Belk. And as a side effect of that, I ended up looking up the company online, looking at their workplace environment, the testimonies by people who are already working there, Indians working there. And Japan as a whole, I think there is no set syllabus as such. You just have to start off with something that interests you, maybe, and then go down that rabbit hole. So I did get a few questions during my interview about why belt specifically, and what are your impressions of Japan, and what do you think are the similarities between Indian culture and Japanese culture, and what are the differences that maybe worry you. So those kind of questions, I think I can make a blanket statement that you can expect that for any Japanese company. And yeah, just be sincere in whatever you're saying, and make sure you are able to point out something specific that stands out to you. I think that would be a good way to answer those questions.
That was like wonderful to hear. What do you think companies actually test in you? What is that they're looking for? How do you know what they're looking for in a candidate?
I think that's a tough question. I don't think you'll have a way of knowing that, to be honest, because the company will have something in mind, starting off perhaps with whether you'll be a good fit for their work culture, and whatever is beyond that, you have no way of knowing it. So it's best that you show up, give your best, and hope for the best.
As we proceed towards the end of the interview, what is one advice you would give to your juniors?
One thing that I'd like to say is that please don't compare yourself with anyone. There'll always be people who are doing worse than you. There'll always be people who are doing maybe far better than you. But there is something that's uniquely yours, right? Try to hold on to that and try to better yourself without comparing or putting yourself down. And I would like to end maybe by paraphrasing this one quote I really like from Meditations. It says that if something is humanly possible, then it is within your reach. So, whatever dreams you have, if there is someone out there who has done it, know that you can also do it. So, yeah.
Very well said. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was truly a pleasure having you here. Your insights, your words will definitely help our listeners. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me here. To those who listen, thank you for tuning in. I hope you're able to get something out of it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and being a part of this podcast. Do like, share, and subscribe for more such exclusive content.